Our friend John Stromme asked us if we wanted to see the mural he and his painting partner Eddie Johnson were painting at the Yamhill Valley Vineyards. One of my basic principles is never to pass up an opportunity to visit a winery. So, of course, we said yes. Yamhill Valley Vineyards is south of McMinnville off Highway 18. It's in the McMinnville AVA, on gorgeous rolling south-facing hills, not too far from the almost famous Erratic Rock. Despite what it may sound like, watching John and Eddie paint a wall is definitely not watching paint dry. The wall in question is huge, supported by a great deck suspended up maybe 30 feet over a canyon full of oak and birdsong, and their painting was a mural of substantial proportion. We asked winery owner Denis to tell us how this project had come about.
We're on a mission in the last 5 years with billboards, with advertising, with upgrading the tasting room, changing that back wall into a destination site, to picnic, so that we can increase wine sales here at the winery. We built this facility in 1985, and since that time until 3 weeks ago, that back wall was an unfinished, ugly concrete wall. And what triggered it was my daughter, who works in the tasting room and sells wine. And in the spring in the warm weather, we walked outside and she looked over at the wall and said, "Dad, you know, what's up with that?" And when you get used to something, you never really see it. We entertained several ideas. What are we going to do? And our tasting room manager said, "You know, my brother-in-law is an artist and he's done some murals."
I have done a party room mural 9 feet tall by 25 feet of a vineyard.
And he came by. I told him a little bit about, you know, what we had in mind. Do you think we could, you know, does this need to look like an Italian countryside villa or a French winery? And he said, "Well, let me put a couple of ideas together."
I looked at the whole scope of the project and decided I needed somebody to help me, obviously, and I asked John if he would help.
We got together and we put together a digital drawing.
And the ideas he put together were stone, granite stone wall with cutouts for windows, with giving it depth so that when people sat outside, they weren't looking at an ugly stone wall, but a beautiful stone winery.
We draw these out with chalk, much like you would use on steel, and then we come in and stamp patterns into it. We talked a lot about how we are going to make these textures, and we've used brushes and sponges and all kinds of different textures.
We've been reduced to sponge and brush.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. The sponge has been really good. Once we get it stamped in here and it looks good, then at that point we come in with small brushes and paint in the cracks, paint in the details. You know, a lot of this is kind of a granite look, so we want those little bits of mica in there, and then we take and make sure that our shadow line is lifting the rock out. We want it to look as three-dimensional as possible.
They've spent an aggressive process as they first put a base layer on and then several other layers and add the chisel marks, add the cracks, tone them differently, and at the end of the day, it looks like stone.
The wall was finished, but John and Eddie had one more idea. They asked assistant winemaker Ariel Eberle to bring the wall alive.